Hello, this is Dr. Natalie welcoming you back to Abiding in the Secret Place, spring session number 2. Preparing to move in to our summer, the season of love, the season of the heart. And we've talked about before that the heart houses the spirit. And in Chinese medicine, the eyes are the window to the liver. And as I said last year, if your eyes are full of light, then your body will radiate light. But if your eyes are full of darkness, then your body will be dark. And that includes your organs. There's been studies that have shown that your DNA actually emits light. And that goes back to the spoken word of our Creator, light be. That's how He created even our bodies. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about our finale of transitioning from spring into summer and making sure we're ready to move into that next season. I've just returned from the celebration of Pentecost at Glory of Zion, which I consider my home church. And I know I've mentioned many times before, but I've enjoyed the church age passing away and us moving into the kingdom age, which is kingdom in the marketplace. I was not a fan of a church age. I grew up going to church, and church people, unfortunately, made me dislike most things that had to do with the Father. But I was thankful that my dad taught me at a very early age that he said, you never want to look to man or a person. They will fail you every time. Only look to God. And that proved so true. And when God called me back to Him and I was able to just really build a strong relationship with Him, I realized the fallacy, right? In church, I realized the fallacy in, of course, religion. Thank goodness I wasn't raised in a religious family. I was raised in a very spiritual family. But just the fallacy of mask wearing, of do as I say, not as I do. Hypocrisy runs rampant in the church, This is okay, but what you're doing is not okay. I find that completely comical, right? Sin? Do you know what the biggest sin is to God? Not believing in Him, not trusting Him. Not meaning that you don't believe He exists. Not believing that He'll fulfill His word or His promise to you. That is lack of faith or lack of trust in your Father and your Creator. That's the greatest sin to Him. We live in a world where everybody's pointing fingers at this is bad, this is horrible, that's worse. I can't believe they do that. I can't believe she does this. And when the pressure cooker gets turned on, about 0.001% of people turn to the Father and say, I'm going to put my full trust in you and nothing else. Not a single other system in this world. And the reason for that is because no one has practiced that trust. And we live in a world where everybody's been wounded and everyone deals with distrust. Everyone's been hurt, right? Been hurt. You've been lied to. You've been cheated on. You've been used, abused. You've had traumas. You've suffered loss. Trust does not come through life experiences. It comes through practice. You have to get to know someone, and then you practice trusting them. And most of us have been let down by people. That's not unusual, right? And so we think, well, it's going to be the same with my Creator. But it isn't. It isn't going to be the same. He never lets us down. And so Pentecost is one of the 3 feasts of the Hebrew calendar that I love to celebrate. And the first being Passover, we talked about that. And that's at the very beginning of the year, the beginning of the calendar year, which is in the spring. And then Pentecost marks the beginning of the summer, or the wheat harvest. And so the Hebrew people would raise their wheat before the Lord and wave it and thank Him and present their offering to Him in expectancy of an excellent wheat season. And so they would take their harvest and then give a portion of it and say, we trust you. We trust you even in what we don't see. That's good, right? We're putting our trust in you before the season begins. That's what bringing an offering to an altar does. You bring your offering and you're saying, I trust you. That's called first fruits. I trust that you will provide. Here's my gift to you from this past season, and I trust that you will provide for me the next season. And so although the Hebrew people and the Jewish people had tons of fallacy in their trust with the Father, but they were able to build this relationship of first fruits based on the fact that during the feast they would be reminded of all of the goodness of the Father. So that God had presented the Torah to Moses on Pentecost, and that the Holy Spirit fell on Pentecost. And so it became this feast of provision that was celebrated. And when I walk through what I like to think of the feast as a gate or a threshold into the next season, I like to think about my Father, my Creator, providing me with all that I need. Imagine if He said, okay, and you're standing at a door, I want you to leave everything behind from last season. All that you've accumulated. Even just think of that material-wise. Just think of that. Okay, I want you to leave everything. And now when you walk through this gate or this threshold, I want you to trust me to provide everything for you. It would be really hard, wouldn't it? I did that once when I moved from Colorado to here. God told me to give up everything that I had, and I did it. And there was even a few things that I brought back with me that about a few months later, He was like, didn't I tell you to get rid of that? I'm like, yes, you did. And He's like, let it go. I want you to let go of everything. And so that letting go allows Him to bring more into our lives that we are not bringing into our lives, right? That He's bringing into our lives, so we can begin to trust Him to provide for us in a newer way, a different way. And each season it becomes easier. And that's why we talk about getting the things out of our soil in the spring as we plant. And so I've had 5 years with this garden at my house. I was thinking about this today. And there's a weed. It's called bindweed. And it looks a lot like morning glory. So it's easily deceiving, right? And you think, oh, look, I've got some morning glory going up. I'm gonna let it spiral up that area right there. Well, bindweed, as in most weeds, right, which is also where we get most of our herbs or weeds. I'm not trying to say weeds are bad in general, but weeds are bad in your garden, okay? So if you're trying to grow fruits, vegetables, plants, whatever it is that you're trying to grow in your garden, you don't want aggressive weeds to take over. And so bindweed can literally take over a garden in about 2 weeks. So you could go out of town for 2 weeks and not know bindweed was coming up and come back and be completely blown away by the aggressiveness of this weed. And you can't just pull it up like real lightly. It comes, easily unattached from your plant, but the root system's pretty intense. So, you have to get in there and get the root out. That's what this spring season is about. That's what we've been trying to do, is to get out the bitterness, to get out the heartache, the woundedness, the loss, the disappointment, the resentment, the anger, the frustration. It's just not possible to move into the next season and have beautiful seeds planted into your heart if that soil has bindweed that will choke it out, if it's hardened or dried or cracked or nutritionless. So think of this feast, Pentecost, as the feast that we pass from the old season into the new season. We already talked about that with winter going into spring, right? And so each season is like a gate and or a threshold. A lot of people don't realize how backwards they go in life. And one of the reasons, let's say 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, like that old song, Paula Abdul. I take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. When it feels that way, it's usually something at a threshold or a gate, or as I like to try to encourage people to take part in these feasts because they're a physical manifestation of those thresholds. It was usually something at that threshold that's holding you back. And so you actually go backward. And I want my listeners to grasp this, because as I was going back into my garden that I was talking about, this is my 5th year, I know what to expect. I know to look for the bindweed, right? Like, I'm ready. Come on, I got you. I know where you're going to pop up, and I'm not going to let you overtake my garden. I know where the crabgrass likes to come in. You're not going to overtake my garden. When I go out of town, I'm not going to be frustrated when I come home. I know what part of my garden gets drier than the other part. So where the ground gets hardened. I've found a better way to plant my flowers this year versus last year. And so each year that you tend to the garden of your heart, the soil and the soul, each year, each season that you walk through this, it's going to become easier and more obvious. And you're going to feel lighter. You're going to feel more youthful. You're going to realize that you look that way as well, that you don't look bogged down or frustrated or irritated. I see so many people that carry the same junk from season to season to season to season. And the reason why I call that spring season the reset button is because if we spend this time getting all of the junk out of our soil in the spring or the reset season time, then the year tends to flourish for us, okay? But if we don't do the work there, then the year seems to be heavier and weightier, okay? I hope that makes sense, because you're just taking an imbalance or disease, you're taking it as baggage from season to season, and it's not going to get better unless you do the work in that soul or soil. And so the excitement of this feast of Pentecost, this feast of provision. Another reason why I enjoy celebrating with Glory of Zion during these feasts is because they talk about the importance of sound as a trajectory to move us forward into the next season. And so there's always a new sound that's released in the atmosphere from our Creator to propel us into that next season. And why is that? Because sound carries a frequency. Sound is a frequency. And so a frequency or a sound moves the physical in the earth. It was designed to do that, which is why we talk so much about frequencies on this page. Vibrational frequencies, emotions, those all affect us physically. They all affect our physical body. And so this sound that's coming forth in the earth for this new season is like a tribal sound that awakens the soul back to its root, back to the root of creation, waking it up, shaking the soul and saying, remember, you're a creation and you have an author. Remember that you have an author. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? Oh, goodness. And so our word for moving into this next season could be that, awaken. It could be awaken, right? I'm all about restoration, which is what we talk about on here. Renewal, restoration, regeneration, reviving us. But we also have to have an awakening, an awareness. Remember me talking about the fact that if we are not aware of what is in our soul, we cannot be healed of it. And one of the greatest books that I read was The Power of Now. And that really stirred my soul in a way that I had never experienced before. So this book, The Power of Now, woke me or made me aware of what was in my soul or my soil, and to why I couldn't focus on the now or the moment. I needed to be in the past or the future. And that was 13 years ago, maybe 14 years ago. And I'm still having to consciously work on what's in my soul, what's in my soil. And I have to consciously remind myself to be in the moment. This is a work. We are a work in progress. We must do this work, but awareness is key. So we could use the word for this next season as awaken our hearts, make us aware of what's in our hearts, Father, because without awareness, we cannot heal. And I talk to so many people that have no clue, no clue of the frequencies that they are giving off, whether it be bitterness, anger, irritation, frustration, hatred. And if they could become aware of what was in their soul, then things in their lives would be different. Because when we're not aware that we need to work on what's in us, we tend to lay blame on everything and everyone around us. And I am speaking from experience. And so when I find myself blaming everything around me, my situation, people around me, then I have learned and I train myself to remember, wait a minute, I need to look inward. What am I attracting? Right? What am I attracting? Why am I creating this energy? Because energy is a magnet. And so if I am having issues in my soul or my soil, I'm going to attract that same energy. And instead of blaming everyone around me for those negative frequencies, for the frequencies of hell, for things going awry or wrong in my life, or going through heartache and difficulty, then I have to remember and remind myself, oh my goodness, this is a good time for me to look inward and to reflect inward. And so concluding for our season of spring, I just want us to remember to look inward at our soil and our soul. What do we need to get out before we walk through this door, before we walk through this gate? Just listen to this. She's singing, awake, awake us. Awake us. Awake our hearts. Make us aware. Bring awareness. Before we walk through this threshold, make us aware. Let's grab the last roots of the crabgrass and the bindweed and all the junk that tries to encroach on our beautiful gardens and choke the life out of them. Wake us.
This army of God shall arise, awake all.
Before I move on to this season of summer, I wanted to just read you a beautiful quote that I found. And this is a quote by Maya Angelou, and it's about the transition of the butterfly. And it says, "We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty." May that be us, right? That we are this beautiful, transformed, transfigured being that we don't even reflect or think about or give any thought to the difficulties that we've experienced in life, the loss, the disappointments, the pain, but rather that pain and that trauma, it produced something beautiful, just like the butterfly. Okay, I'm going to look forward to seeing you in the next season, the Summer of Love. Okay, I hope you guys have a great day. And hit the like button if you were blessed.